Good evening. It is Thursday. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It is me. It is Trevor. It is ASTV, as the cool kids say, the Thursday night podcast for American Scouser TV. And there's really only one topic on everybody's minds tonight, which we will talk about. But Trevor, how are you?
Hi. Other than my NCAA champion already being eliminated from my bracket, I'm doing pretty good.
There's worse things happen at sea, they say.
Yeah.
But it can't be any worse than, let's get straight into it. Last night.
Yeah.
Not a good night. Let's get real about it. As my nice little punny title says. We expected a lot. We talked about, if I remember correctly, about the idea that we played poorly in the weekend, so we were kind of saving it up for Real Madrid. We all dreamt of another 3-4-0 pasting of a big team to recover a Champions League campaign and get us on the road to success. But it was a bit of a damp squib, wasn't it?
Yeah. And when we all saw that lineup and saw the four forwards and going, okay, this is Klopp going for it. He's going to throw everything forward. And after about, I wouldn't even say 10 minutes, it was clear that this was just going to be a bridge too far and that there was really no coming back unless Real Madrid had a collective fainting all at the same time and we were able to just walk the ball into the net.
If we look at the lineup, we kind of, I think everybody could predict what it was. As soon as we knew that Bajetic was out and now apparently out for the season, which is unfortunate for the kid, and maybe something we'll talk about later. It kind of picked itself almost, didn't it? Alisson obviously in goal, Kanate, Van Dijk,
Trent Robbo,
and then Elliott in midfield with Gakpo and Nunez and Salah. I mean, look, you couldn't ask for maybe with Firmino possibly in there instead, or maybe Hendo instead of Milner, wasn't it?
It was Milner.
There's questions to ask, but not too many. But it just didn't perform, did it?
No, there was everything that you would look to get from that lineup. You got nearly the opposite. There was the more I try to figure out what the overall game plan was from just you try to look at it and you're like, okay, I know what's going to go on, and then everything that you thought was going to go on doesn't, and you try to piece together why. And some credit obviously has to go to Real Madrid because they went in and professionally just stamped us out. But from our standpoint, I don't get what the tactics were. I don't get what the as we'll get to. I'll put a bit of a tease in what the plan was. There, I don't have much to expand on that.
We kind of, it's a 3-goal deficit, 5 goals conceded at home. Pride hurt, you would expect and hope, really, as a supporter. You would kind of expect it to go all guns blazing. I didn't get to see the first half live, so I had to watch it in retrospect, knowing what the score was and what the second half performance was. But there just wasn't enough energy, was there? You didn't play like a team that needed to get 3 goals back as quickly as possible to make the field level again, did they?
Yeah, and that was the frustrating part. And I was listening to it on the radio, and just the commentary kept saying over and over again, Liverpool's playing like a team that's up 3 goals, not down 3. Lots of sideways passes, lots of time just spent on the ball with no bit of urgency. That was the word that just kept popping up over and over again. Where's the urgency? Where's the urgency? Even if it's a couple times where you just have to try to lump the ball up, as uncouth as that sounds, to just get the ball into a dangerous spot quickly. There was no time where I felt that they were going to just give everything into getting that first goal, never mind 3.
I mean, I agree with you in the sense that the directness would have been called for. And you would think that with Nunes up there on a little bit of a purple patch in terms of performances, and Salah maybe always looking to exercise those demons from the Champions League final that he got injured in, you would want to get the ball to those players as quickly as possible, wouldn't you? But it was the same in the first leg as well. It was almost the worst of a Brendan Rodgers European team, wasn't it? There was a sense that we were trying to impress them rather than beat them.
Yeah, it was okay. We're playing Real Madrid, so we have to play this pretty game with 100 passes before you score type of deal, instead of just going, okay, we have two very fast people on the wing that if we give them any space to work with, can get the ball at Courtois' net. And as we showed in the first leg, if you get to him early, you can make him make mistakes. It's when he gets into the game is when he gets more solidified and he gets more confident. He makes a couple saves, and you just, at that point, you're not going to get it past him. But when it was just, there was no trouble for him to deal with outside of, I think, maybe one half decent chance, he didn't have anything to worry about. So when he finally had to make that one save, there was no early trepidation for him. So he was fine, and it kind of just permeated through the lines of Real Madrid to the point where nothing we could have done would have affected their calm at all.
Alan M makes a point that Klopp was off grid like a Cheshire cat. It was clear that he never expected to win the game. But there was a point, there was that nice little move in the second half, the little kind of 1-2s that ended up with Harvey Elliott at the top of the box, just inside the penalty area, and he plays the ball out to, I think, Nunes, if not Gakpo, I think might be there. I can't remember quite who was there. The camera cuts in the replay to Klopp shouting what seemed like to me as a veteran lip reader, "Have it." So do you think that maybe Klopp was frustrated with the players, that maybe they didn't take it seriously enough?
Yeah, and when you're chasing a deficit like that, there's always that just fans impetus to just go shoot, just say shoot over and over again. Every time you're in a good spot, shoot. And some of these guys can be so unselfish at the most inopportune times. But if Klopp is like saying, that's something that you have to kind of implore your players to have that kind of green light in those spots. Because sometimes, all right, maybe Elliott is of the thought process that if he gets into that spot and he sees Nunez have any sort of advantage with a run, that he's going to pass to him instead of going, okay, I have a bit of space, I'm just going to let it fucking rip. I'm not in the dressing room. I don't know any of this. So you can just kind of go by what you see. And if that's kind of what he's been told in training sessions, then that's what he's going to do, because that's just all he knows what to do.
In terms of, the fact we didn't score, but do you think the game would have changed and maybe the players' attitudes had changed had we scored even at that point, if not before? That maybe they thought it was a hopeless task. And given, they're full-time professionals, they know the game. Real Madrid were really handling us quite well. I thought they didn't get out of second gear at all. I thought they were just happy to play the ball around and waste the time that way. But had we scored an early goal maybe in the first half, do you think that would have changed the impetus of the game, or would we have continued to labour to create chances?
I hope that an early goal would have kind of put the old spur up the ass of them to kind of just go, all right, now it's on. But when you never made Courtois work in like the first half an hour of nothing of significant note where you're going, oh, okay, now you have to just pounce while he's rattled. There's, even if they did score on that opportunity, and I think it was probably, like between 5 and 8 minutes after the restart that you're talking about, where if you scored that early in the second half, I felt it could have been that the reversal of fortune of what happened in the first leg, where Real got that third goal, and then their confidence soared, and everything, there was no continuity to what happened after that third goal. They were just kind of throwing shit at the wall, and all of it stuck. So it was something where if we had gotten that first goal at whatever point, then we could have kind of tried to do the same thing. And the fact that never came to fruition was a bit frustrating.
In terms of the team selection, when I saw the team, I didn't see the point of having Fabinho and James Milner. And we love James Milner to bits. He's a fantastic servant to the club. But he is also not as sprightly as he used to be. The engine may still go, but the accelerator isn't always, you're not able to always press that accelerator. Would Henderson in there being a better bet in the first half, or do you think Klopp played the hand he could for the game?
Yeah, I think the decision to start Milner spoke volumes about Henderson's availability, because I really do think that if you have those guys with pace, that could have really given Real Madrid some problems. And Henderson, that guy that is known for these past couple of years at getting the ball and then getting rid of it, it would have kind of begged some questions for Real Madrid's backline. But the fact that Milner had to start and play as long as he did, I love Millie to death, but he's a closer at this point. He's a guy that needs to come in and just steady the ship in the final 20, 25 minutes. That's what his role should be on this team at this point. And the fact that he's in there, and yeah, like you were saying, it's definitely something where, yeah, the engine still runs, but the tires are a little worn. The accelerator doesn't have the same giddy up it used to. Yeah, he considers himself to be the fittest guy on the pitch at all times, but you could be the fittest person in the world. You're still 37, and you're having to run back and mark guys who are 22 and 23. Yeah, the midfield that Real Madrid put out were no spring chickens, but the guys that they were bringing in were guys that were world beaters, and it just there was no real chance for him to kind of be his best self with the setup.
Let's go a little bit further back. Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's been some criticism after the game from pundits in the English press, and I believe Carragher had a little bit of a go as well. I didn't read too much into the article, but it seemed like he was, not criticising, but saying, maybe something has to change. Maybe he needs competition or something. We put a lot of weight on those young shoulders a lot of the time, but he's mature professional at this point. Should we be expecting more from him?
Absolutely. And the way Trent has regressed within this system this year is easily one of the most disappointing parts of the year. And yeah, and as Alan said, with Bajcetic now being out, you have another drop off in that midfield, where an already very thin bench just got even thinner. And there's guys that are supposedly available or in training that never get put on the roster for these games. So what's the fucking point? But looping back to Trent, just never having that consistent cover this year, I think, has been really detrimental to him. It's hindered his run within this team. It's, as you've seen from Gareth Southgate's team selection, he's not even getting picked for England consistently anymore, which I think has got to be super, super just frustrating for him. And that shit carries over. There's never going to be a time where I think Trent's head is completely in it until there's stability in front of him. And there's just been zero this year. And he's suffered because of it.
In terms of, some players you catch lightning in a bottle, and then once the the lightning dissipates, you're just left on reputation. Players that I can think of are maybe, like, say, just going back to age myself, but Darren Anderton, who was fantastic when he started, but eventually he just kind of fizzled out. Well, he was a sick note as well at that point. Robbie Fowler, he's a god to us, but he really only had that maybe 3 years of peak performance, and then after that he was kind of drifting. Michael Owen was the same, hampered by injuries. Is it possible that we've essentially used up all of the Trent Alexander-Arnold X-Factor fuel at this point, and that maybe he needs to mature into a different type of player, maybe even the midfielder he seems to want to be? Or is it just this is his bad season and he's going to come back next year as good as ever?
Yeah, I really hope it's the latter, that this is the anomaly, this is the aberration, this is the outlier. I don't think at this stage of things he needs to be pushed up into the midfield yet, just because I think coming from the right back position allows him to do what he does best. Those overlaps and being able to kind of bomb up from those areas makes him the player that he is. But also it could be something where there's so much quote unquote tape on him now that he's been found out, and it very well could be that the bloom has come off the rose with Trent. And I hope it's not the case. I really do. But it's not something I can rule out, because he's shown all year that there's been zero consistency regardless of who's in front of him. He's had stretches where he's looked like the Trent of old, but there's been significantly more stretches where he's just looked lost, disinterested, or just plain terrible.
Let's kind of flip the coin a little bit. It's the third time we've met Real Madrid in competition in a significant moment, where Liverpool needed to win. Obviously, the two finals you need to win. You don't get to take a day off on those. But we're 0-3. Are they our Champions League hoodoo team under Klopp, or is it just a matter of, you just don't have the right blend to compete against Real Madrid? I mean, like, Ancelotti I think, is a fantastic manager. I wouldn't say he's a great tactical coach or anything, but he certainly seems to get players to play to their best, even if he's not digging up trees tactically or anything like that. I don't think Ancelotti will ever be famous for tactical innovation, but he produces teams that can play to the best of their ability and the talents to express themselves. There's no system you can associate with him. But is this Klopp's hoodoo? Is that where Klopp seems to come apart, where there's no system to play against, so they can't really analyze anything? It's just a matter of going one for one, hoping that your players can beat their players in the one-on-ones.
Yeah, my thing with Ancelotti is he's probably the best ego manager in the game. Like you said, there's no real tactical. I don't want to downplay his role as a manager, but there's no real significant tactical genius when it comes to Carlo Ancelotti. But he's a guy that can massage egos. He picks guys on form. He picks guys that can just blend well together. There's never a time where you're looking at a team of his, except for that little bit during his Everton run, but that was for different reasons, obviously. where you're going, oh, why did he do this? Why did he pick player X? It seems that everything he does in that thing makes sense. And like you were saying, he just puts the guys out there and kind of just lets them play. And if a guy is not playing to his ability, he has no problem going up and yanking him off the field. There's a lot that to be said with that, because especially with Real Madrid, where you have a ton of guys on making a ton of money, you're going to have to make a lot of tough decisions a lot of times. And his big thing is he doesn't give a shit about those decisions. He will make them, and he will make them with a smile on his face, and he'll go about his business. And to say that, yeah, they're our bogey team in the Champions League, I think they're everybody's bogey team, especially in this past decade. Just the amount of times that they've run the fucking gamut to beat every single team that was in like the top 5 of the betting odds to win the Champions League is just uncountable. They don't really have easy runs through these tournaments. They always beat like 2 or 3 of the proverbial favorites, and they usually beat 2 or 3 before the semifinals, and then they have to go over the 2 probably toughest hurdles at the end. So they're just a team that knows how to play the Champions League. It seems simplistic, but they've just kind of they've struggled in La Liga this year. They've had lots of just really drab spells, but when it comes to this competition, they know what they're doing, top to bottom, and they have players that just live for these moments.
I'm not entirely sure if I'm remembering correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong, if you know, but was Zidane the manager the first time he played Madrid?
The first way back, not in any of these past 3 seasons, he wasn't. The past 3 times they've knocked us out, there was no Zidane.
Who was the manager the first time for the shoulder? Salah.
I think that was. Hold on, I think that was Zidane. Let me look, just to be 100% sure. I'm fairly certain it was, because. Yeah, with Ramos and Zidane and let me pull it up. Slowly but surely, filling the dead air with my monotone singing. There it is. And that is.
It was Zidane. So it was Zidane. The reason and the pause would be worth it. Zidane is also another manager who's not famous for any sort of tactical innovation. He's a manager who just gets that's what he did. I thought he did a fantastic job with what, as a young manager, say, even though he was one of the greats of the game. But he is also another one with a reputation for just letting players play. Is there something to be said for that as we go into the next sort of section of the show to talk a bit more about Klopp? Or is there something to be said to that maybe Klopp doesn't know how to deal with teams that improvise? Because essentially that's what those teams do. They improvise. They don't have, when player X goes to position Y, player Z is going to make this sort of run into this area. It's basically just, I'm the best left-sided central defender on the team, so I'm going to do left-sided central defender things to the best of my ability. Is there something to be said for Klopp maybe not having it sounds counterintuitive, but doesn't have a plan for that kind of player or that kind of a team?
Yeah.
Alan says, hurry up, Trevor. And he also says, have you watered your plant this week?
Absolutely not. It's going to die a valiant death, but it's going to do it on its own terms. It'll be outside. Probably in like a month, you won't see the plant in the background anymore. So it's not going to the farm, but it is going outside where it will thrive. and I'll make sure I take pictures of it and I'll put it up so everybody knows that it's okay. But to answer your question, that lack of adaptability with Klopp is something that we talk about ad nauseum on all of our content, because it's something that I think is one of his Achilles heels as a manager, where you see that thing and you go, okay, it's a simple fix of if you can kind of just read and react instead of, no, this has been drilled into me from day one that, like you said, when this guy makes this run, I either have to pass it to here and go this way and that way. And you have all of that kind of geometry going through your head at all times. You don't really just play. And Real Madrid have both the players and the intelligence to kind of work kind of free flow, like you said, improvisational football, where you kind of just read and react. And when you got a guy like Luka Modric, who is one of the best at it in terms of getting the ball and then just having that sense of, all right, 9 times out of 10, if I get the ball at point A, I'm going to have 2 guys that are going to go into this space. So I'm just going to release them and hope that they're there. And I'm either going to make a pass that's going to go into space that is not going to hurt us, or it's going to look great because it's going to fall right on the feet of the guys that I think it's going to land on, and we're going to be in a dangerous position. I don't think we have guys that have that willingness to kind of break the mold of the rigidity of Klopp's system, to kind of not necessarily stand up to him and go, hey, we need to do something different, nor that lack the ability. All these guys are really quality players, and if given the opportunity, I think could be that type of just free jazz type of player. It's whether or not you fear that you're going to get pulled or get browbeaten because you did something that you, quote unquote, weren't supposed to.
Just in terms of that, we can move on to our next topic, which is a nice little segue there, Trevor. We made up for the dead air. But is Klopp the man with the plan? Because as we're talking here, it just occurs to me, because I think you're correct. I think he's a very systems manager. He's more like Benitez and Mourinho than people may want to think or maybe have thought before, in that the system is king. But as you're talking there, I'm sitting here thinking, if he had a prime Steven Gerrard, I have a sneaky suspicion he wouldn't know what to do with him. Do you think Klopp is maybe too rigid in his thinking about the game? And while it can have success, it's also a case of when it's found out, there's maybe no way back for him to adapt it and properly adapt it. Because I think we saw at the start of the season he tried to do that with the Trent being a tucked in fullback rather than the marauding wing back that we were so used to, and the plan didn't work. At the start of the season was disastrous for us. So do you think maybe for Klopp, he either has to get a raft of new players to play the system to perfection, or do you think, maybe he's not the man for the future because he doesn't know how to adapt to the way the game is changing?
Yeah, and that's the scary thought that we've all had of maybe he just isn't the guy anymore. None of us really want to believe that, but it may be a reality that we kind of have to set up for ourselves, because there's always been a point with him, and I don't think it's the old 7-year itch thing anymore where he just is going to abandon ship. But it comes a time where there's you can only run this group of guys so much. You can only press for so long without restocking the shelves. And maybe that's a bit on him. Maybe that's a bit on management. Maybe that's a bit on the kind of just the transfer policies. That there has to be some accountability strewn across all three things. And Alan, we've all kind of said that the midfield is the kind of the biggest issue in terms of that. But I think up front, we've made a ton of moves up front, but he's just so committed to that 4-3-3. And Gakpo's a guy that, and I heard Gally talk about it the other day, where he just doesn't look like he wants to press. He wants them to make a mistake with somebody else, and he be the guy that pounces on the loose ball. He doesn't want to be the guy that jars the ball loose. He wants to be the guy that picks up the scraps. And it just doesn't work. If you don't have everybody committed to the press, teams like Real Madrid are going to just gut you. They're going to find your space, and they're going to make you have to – they're going to force you to do the thing that you don't want to do. And at that point, you're going to just – you're almost going to be like a child where, like, no, I don't want to do that. And then your parents make you do it, and then you do it shittily, and then it makes things even worse because you're – instead of not doing it, you're doing it horrible. And then it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You either have to do it with some heart and some determination, or you just got to be off the field, because not doing it or doing it bad are one and the same in my eyes.
In terms of, I think you're correct in what you say about the press, and it really does fall down on an individual. It's not like zonal defending, like right at the back and like bunkering in and all that, where somebody can pick up the slack if somebody's out of position. With pressing, you really need everybody doing the job. You don't just press with one, as they used to say in Holland. You press with all 11 players. But in terms of this, it just occurs to me again as we talk about it. You talk about, as we said, maybe Klopp isn't the guy for the future. Maybe the game is passing him by. It's almost reminiscent of Rafa Benitez, isn't it? Because he kind of popularized the 4-2-3-1 in England, although it was a formation that was in a lot of use in Spain. But eventually, everybody played 4-2-3-1. And then it nullified all of his advantages. And we've seen his performance as a coach. He's still a great coach, but he's just not an impactful one as much as he was for Liverpool. Same with Mourinho. He's still a great coach, but he's just not as impactful as he was with Chelsea when he first arrived, or Porto before that. In terms of adaptability, is it possible for Klopp to come away from this season, maybe take a long break, during the summer, let the staff handle the first few weeks or whatever of pre-season, and have a good think about what he wants to do with the team, maybe do a bit of study. I know pro licensed coaches have to do, continuing education hours and all that, but maybe for his own sake, he needs to go and look at what's happening in the game. Or are we going to have this conversation next year, and it's going to be a painful divorce between the Liverpool fans and Jurgen Klopp, because at some point we have to say this isn't working.
Yeah, I like the reference to Benitez, because in Spain what he was doing was different, because there was like you say, with that formation at Valencia, he had guys that were able to kind of just have that kind of Bermuda Triangle where you never knew where one of them was going to be. And when he brought that to England, he was coming into 4-4-2. Everybody it was very straightforward, and it was a shock to the system. But all these guys are, for the most part, the teams that stay near the top. Guys like Ferguson and Wenger found that shit out pretty quickly. It's like here in the States when people were starting to run the Wildcat in American football. In the first couple weeks, nobody knew what to do. It was a phenomenon. It was great. people had a lot of fun with it, but it got found out real quick, and that shit is bygone era as quickly as it came in. And I think a lot of these guys, especially with the influx of foreign managers into England, they come in with a lot of new ideas and a lot of fun plans and tactics, but they do have a shelf life. And there comes a time where you have to just kind of break that mold and come up with something new. And guys that can't, which seems to be the camp that Jurgen's in right now, where this is what got me here. I don't know how to do anything but this. Yes, we can applaud him for everything that he's done for this club, but there has to be a point where you're found out, you've run your horses into the ground, you have to come up with something different, or you have to just go. And no one wants to see him go for that aforementioned everything he's done. But if the FSG and company are going to be insistent on how much money they're spending and what types of players that they got their eyes on, he has to kind of either tailor the tactics now to what he has, or there has to be a significant shift in the transfer policy. There can't be two groups going in two directions. You either have to have a ton of players that can come in and just run themselves to death for 3 or 4 years and then shovel them out and just put a new batch of coal in, or you have to kind of work with what you have and try to find the best way to operate with the pieces that you have.
You mentioned Alex Ferguson there, and one of the things that made him begrudgingly one of the probably the second best manager of all time after Bob Paisley, as far as I'm concerned. But what he did was, when a new tactical shift came into the game, he was almost, I hate to say this about an old curmudgeonly Scottish Manchester United manager, but he was almost David Bowie-like in that he could anticipate the next trend maybe a half a season to a season before it happened, when it was just, starting somewhere, some Portuguese team was lighting the Portuguese league on fire with something that was going to be the new deal, and he would go and find out about it. But what he would do was he would change his assistant coaches. So when sports psychology, I remember in the early 2000s, became a big kind of buzzword in English football, he went out and he brought McLaren in with Bill Beswick with him from Middlesbrough, and suddenly, that mentality Manchester United had a whole freshness to it. He brought Carlos Queiroz in for that the what was it, the forwardless formation that he had. It wasn't a false
the
nine.
False nine before the false nine.
Yeah, the 4-6 or whatever it was. Yeah. That thing, yeah. So he was always on the ball, to no pun intended, about what was coming next. Is it time, particularly with all the rumors about this tension between various staff members at the club, to maybe say to Pep Linders, go off and make your own way in the world, and then maybe bring in a new coach who has who has an eye on the next big thing in tactics, and then maybe let that person run that side of the game and maybe freshen things up that way?
I don't think it's a bad idea, especially with the amount of teams that have seemingly inquired about Pep Linders in the past. If it's something where you could kind of not necessarily get rid of him, but kind of make a mutually beneficial decision, and let him spread his wings and kind of make his own way, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And you were sitting there begrudgingly giving Alex Ferguson his flowers, and I'm going to do the same in another front of the loyalty to players. Yes, he had all of that original academy products that he loved, but when each of their times came up, there was no hesitation. He took them out and made way, and always seemingly got either their kind of required value or more for them. Whereas we're going to just see guys leave on freeze. We're going to get no value back for a lot of these players just because it's, hey, oh, look at all of these records player A set. How can we get rid of him? Okay, but that's the only guy that people want. And maybe you could turn that desire for, and we all know at this point, Mo is the guy that a lot of people are talking about in this hypothetical. If a PSG or Real Madrid want to come in and pay stupid money for him, you can kind of, I don't know, turn that around and put that towards a Bellingham that we view as too expensive and kind of refresh that way. Yes, it would stink to see a lot of these guys go, but you have to do something. Sitting back and doing nothing is just going to lead to more anguish down the road. And it's just a pill that a lot of Liverpool fans do not want to swallow.
On that note, it's a nice, yet again, another great segue for our last section tonight. The threshold question, as always, that we try and end the show with. It's not a funny one. There's no abstract Monty Python style humor in it, but it is a philosophical one. It comes the end of the season, Trevor. You're the one that decides the future of Liverpool. You have a choice. You can either lose Klopp for a new, young, fresh-thinking manager, or you can lose Salah with no guarantee of a replacement of his stature coming in. Who do you lose?
Oh God, yeah. I with the current state of the transfer policy of the club, and not having a direct replacement for Mo scares me more than life after Jurgen. So I'm gonna have to pick and the easily gifable Klopp out. That's it's just the I'm getting my left arm cut off instead of my right.
For me, I would probably stick with Klopp, and only because I still can't forgive Mo Salah for getting the frosted tips on his hair, because I'm still pretty convinced that's exactly why he's not having the bestest of seasons, because that was just ridiculous.
I think that's fair. I think it's a punishable offense.
Absolutely a punishable offense. So that's that for our show tonight. Just remains to say thank you to Trevor. With no game next weekend or this weekend, and I think there's international weekend after that. So we'll see about having a Thursday show. But if we do, it'll be a thematic one like we've done before. Maybe look back on a previous season or talk about a particular great Liverpool team. That's always a good blast, especially if you're an old geezer like me. But just right to say, Trevor, thank you for being here again, as always. Thank you to Alan M., who was a stalwart in the comment section tonight, holding it all together by himself. And for everybody else, the EPL fantasy show should be on next, so make sure you stay if you're one of the cool kids, which I'm not. And then we have, I believe, the morning coffee possibly tomorrow morning, so that'll be a good one so we can hear more whining about Real Madrid game. Yeah. And other than that, we will see everybody next week for all intents and purposes. Enjoy the weekend and don't drink too heavily. After Wednesday, there's still more games to go. We want to be conscious for those. So Trevor, have a good one, and everybody else, we will see you soon, and peace out.